I'm Dylan.
And I'm Keon.
And this is Trust Your Doctor, that podcast where we have the patience to play an 1,023 move logic puzzle.
And also we die at the end from poison candy. Spoiler.
No,
we're gonna
what?
Eat some poison candy.
What? No, we didn't die. No.
Hey, you don't know that for a fact.
I think we do.
We haven't watched the next serial.
Okay, that's true. But I think we know the doctor doesn't die from poisoned candy.
But he eats poison
And
candy.
that would be the worst way to write him out. That'd be even worse than if he just walked off screen and came back different and just never explained it.
Which is actually what was going to happen in this serial. But then it didn't.
Because that would have been dumb.
Then again, a lot of dumb things happen behind the scenes this serial. Which we'll certainly get into. But anyway.
So it begins where the arc left off, with the TARDIS being all... No, I mean not the TARDIS. The Doctor being all invisible and stuff. And Dodo being like, Doctor, where are you?
But then the Doctor somehow rematerializes and...
Yeah, when they go outside.
Right. And the Doctor realizes that they've materialized in the world of the Celestial Toymaker, who's like this omnipotent guy who just loves playing games and is also immortal and has his own dimension. Really overpowered.
The most overpowered Doctor Who villain in existence. And instead of using that power to just destroy the Doctor, he decides to pit the Doctor and Steven and Dodo against each other in a way. He makes Steven and Dodo play games to get the TARDIS back, and the Doctor has to play a trilogic puzzle, and he has 1,023 moves, and Steven and Dodo have to find the TARDIS before the Doctor finishes his game for them to get the TARDIS back. So at the end of each and Steven and Dodo's games, there's a TARDIS, and it's either the real TARDIS or fake TARDIS. So they have to keep winning games until they get the real TARDIS.
Right, and if Steven and Dodo lose, they become the Toymaker's dolls for him to play with, and if the Doctor loses, he'll be stuck with the Toymaker playing games with him for all eternity. Because the Toymaker wants a greater challenge than what he's had so far, and he thinks the Doctor's superior intellect will give him that.
So it's implied the Doctor and the Celestial Toymaker have met before.
No, I don't think it's implied. I think he flat out says...
Oh,
"I've
no,
been
you're
here
right.
before."
Yeah, he says that I was here before and I left, like, immediately. But then later he knows all the games. So, anyway. They start... Steven and Dodo play Blind Man's Bluff against two clowns.
Right, two clown dolls that the Toymaker has brought to life, and the Toymaker pits Steven and Dodo against, I guess, other people who have failed his games and that he's turned into dolls.
Which begs the question, how do you get to that dimension if you don't have a TARDIS?
It's true, I never actually thought of that. How did they get there?
Anyway.
Some sort of Alice in Wonderland-ish type of thing.
Yeah, anyway. So, only one of the clowns talks for some reason. The other one just makes annoying noises.
But they play, and the pair of clowns succeeds, and then it's Steven and Dodo's turn to play, and one of the clowns decides to move all the obstacles around, so Steven doesn't know where he's going.
Right. Should we explain the rules of Blind Man's Bluff before we continue? We probably should. Just in case someone hasn't played it.
You wear a blindfold, and then you walk around some dangerous...
You wear a blindfold and the other person has to direct you. And in this episode, whoever's directing, which in this case is Dodo and the female clown, who's named Clara, they have a buzzer in this glass box, and I think it's once to go left and two for right.
I think they could have made their own...
Probably. But that was the one they were using.
Right.
One for left, two for right, three for stop, four to go. So yeah, so the clowns make it through easily, and then now it's Steven's turn. And what was the guy's clown name?
Joey.
Joey? Okay, so Joey is outside the glass box, and Clara and Dodo are inside. And Dodo's trying to direct Steven, but Joey keeps moving all the obstacles. So
Right.
Steven fails.
Yeah.
Or he doesn't fail, but he's moving them so that Steven will fail.
Yeah. Um, but upon closer inspection of the clown team's blindfold, they find out that it's actually not a blindfold.
Yeah, you can see through it.
And they're like, "You guys are cheating."
Yeah, so Steven finishes, and so they've both won, but the clowns are like, we won. It's like, no, it's a tie. Steven inspects the blindfold, and he makes them do it again with the real blindfold, and they fail.
And they get turned back into dolls. And and meanwhile, the doctor is playing his puzzle with the toy maker, and the toy maker makes him invisible and intangible except for his hand.
Yeah, because the doctor communicates with Steven and Dodo. He like tells them to be careful, and when they get to the second puzzle in the second episode, he tells
He's
them
about to tell them the answer, but
yeah, and then the Celestial Toymaker takes away his voice, so we only see the doctor's hand for 2 episodes.
once again, another instance of the doctor just being basically written out of the entire serial. It's happened so much in season 3. Why? Why, writers? Why write out your main character?
Episode 1 ends with Steven and Dodo getting to the TARDIS, which isn't actually the TARDIS, and they get a piece of paper that has a riddle on, which I don't remember for the life of me because it was really long and complicated.
It was. We could read it. It's probably on the article.
Oh, here. 4 legs, no feet, of arms, no lack. It carries no burden on its back. 6 deadly sisters, 7 for choice. Call the servants without voice.
Right, so that's sort of the next riddle they have to solve.
For the next puzzle. It's like a hint for the next puzzle, basically.
Right. So in the next episode, they proceed, Steven and Dodo proceed, and they find a couple rooms with 7 chairs in them. So they figure that those are the 4 legs, no feet, of arms, no lack part of the riddle, because chairs makes sense.
Because chairs.
And then they realize that the 6 deadly sisters, 7 for choice part of the riddle means that of all of the 7 chairs, only 1 is safe to sit in, and the other 6 are deadly.
Right.
So
the Celestial Toymaker finds some enemies for them to play against, which in this case isn't actually dolls, but playing cards.
Right, a king and a queen and a jack and a joker.
Of hearts.
Yeah.
Alice in Wonderland-esque.
Yeah, this whole serial is Alice in Wonderland-esque, to be honest.
So,
but the queen's headdress, though, those protruding hearts.
We'll talk about costumes. So, they're there, and Steven and Dodo are like, whoa. And Steven's just telling Dodo, they're just playing cards, don't worry about them, it's okay, just, we need to figure out this puzzle. And Dodo's like, no, look, they're human. And Steven's like, no, Dodo, they're just made by the Celestial Toymaker. Which comes back to bite Dodo in episode 4.
Yeah, it does. But anyway, Steven and Dodo find 7 dolls with which they can test the chairs to see which ones are deadly and which ones aren't, which one isn't. But
3 disappear. Or they just leave.
They hide 3 of the dolls because the king and the queen come into the room, right, and they're like, hey, look, here's some dolls. And there's 1 for each of us, but they haven't seen the other 3. So Steven hides them so that they can use them later.
Right.
So each one of them now has 1 doll, and I guess the Jack and the Joker are just out of commission.
No, they're in the other room. The king and queen told them to stay in that room.
Oh.
The first room.
But yeah, they try. Each person tries one of the dolls on one of the chairs, and they all just die.
Hard. Well, they would have died. 1 gets electrocuted, 1 gets a knife in his back, 1 just disappears.
And then I think 1 just gets violently shaken to death.
Yeah. So
they're like, whoa, guess those aren't the chairs.
Yeah, the doctor was about to tell them that it's actually chair number, and then he gets cut off by the Celestial Toymaker.
Now the doctor is just a floating hand.
Playing the game. So, right, so the king and the queen realize they can use the Joker as an extra doll, and they're just gonna murder this poor guy. And Steven and Dodo are in the room with 3 chairs, and Dodo decides to sit in chair number 2, and she almost dies.
Right, she sits in the freezing chair.
And the Celestial Toymaker taunts the Doctor about this. He's like, haha, Dodo sat in the freezing chair.
And then Dodo's like, I'm cold. Oh god, I'm cold. And then somehow she gets up. Steven's like, just get up, Dodo.
Imagine if she'd sat in the knife chair.
Oh god. A horrible end to Dodo.
Oh boy.
But then...
So they stop the King and the Queen from using the Joker as a test subject. And then the King and the Queen are like, well, we can sit on this chair together.
Yeah, now there's only 2 chairs left, so they're like, well, it's a 50-50 chance. Or
the chair just collapses, right? Yeah, there's only 2 chairs left.
Yeah. The chair collapses, and they get turned back into dolls.
So Steven and Dodo are like, all right, must be chair number 5, let's go. And they sit down.
And they win.
Yeah. They win. So now, well, honestly, they don't win.
Don't win.
Because they didn't figure out the final part of the riddle.
Oh, right.
They're calling the dolls without voice. So they're like, because now that the 3 dolls have gone missing, they're like, what? So they go to the TARDIS door and it's still locked. And they try to call the dolls and nothing happens. And then the phone rings. The phone in the door. And
it's the Toymaker, and he tells them the next riddle.
Oh, right.
Which was...
Hunt the key to fit the door that leads out onto the dancing floor, then escape the rhythmic beat, or you'll forever tap your feet.
And then the dolls show back up, and they're like, yo, we're back. So they don't say anything because they're like mute, because they're dolls.
Then episode 2 ends.
And they never really resolved that final part of that riddle. Call the servants without voice. I mean...
Yeah.
It's kind of just left there. Doesn't really matter, though. Either way, in episode 3, the Doctor's still playing.
I mean, he doesn't have much of a choice.
Yep. And...
yeah. So, yeah. Steven and Dodo can't get through this one door, and they notice the Doctor's at, like, move 800 or something. Because he only gets 1,023 moves to play the game, because that's how many it would take if you played the game perfectly without making any mistakes.
Right, and the Toymaker said he would restore his body and voice on the second to last move.
Right, at move 1,021. So, Steven and Dodo walk into a kitchen with more dolls that have come alive.
Right, there's a baker and a soldier and a kitchen boy who's asleep.
Who just doesn't do anything.
Right. Gets locked in a cupboard. That's about it.
And now there's this whole 15-minute segment where they're looking for the key in the kitchen.
Honestly, this would be a more aptly named episode for Feast of Steven. I mean, it's the same basic idea, chaos, except this time they're actually in a kitchen.
Yeah.
So they're just looking for the key for like 15 minutes, and they're just yelling at each other. And
well, they don't start by yelling at each other. Dodo convinces Sergeant Rugg to help her, so he's like, okay. So he's helping her.
And then the baker,
Mrs. Wiggs.
Right, Mrs. Wiggs is like, why are you helping them?
Why are you smashing all my china? And then it's just an uproar. And then Dodo's like, Steven, the only place we haven't checked is the pie. So they open up the pie, and there's the key, and they get through the door, and they're like, sorry. And they just leave the kitchen in December.
Yeah, honestly, this portion of the serial felt like pure filler.
Maybe.
Who knows?
And then
they actually
shows up.
Right. They get on to the next part of the riddle.
The dance floor part.
And what does the Toymaker say to them there?
Oh, he just says like clean yourself up, and
right.
If you don't stop him from getting to the TARDIS, I'll smash you to pieces. Which he doesn't do, but
oh well. So Steven and Dodo are now at the dance floor, and they see some ballerina dolls there. And they're like, well, the TARDIS is just beyond the floor. It should be pretty easy to get over there. But then as soon as they step foot on the dance floor, some music starts and the dolls start dancing and they get swept up into it.
Yep.
And
Could have seen
meanwhile,
that coming.
yeah,
It was in
meanwhile,
the middle.
Mrs. Wiggs and Mr. Rugg have showed up and they're now on the dance floor too. And some more chaos ensues and it ends up with Steven and Dodo on the other side of the dance floor and Mr. Rugg and Mrs. Wiggs stuck forever dancing.
But
So,
then Steven and Dodo get through the door, and Rug and Wiggs just shrink down into dolls.
yeah.
And they get another riddle.
Right. This one, it was just Lady Luck will show the way, win the game, or here you'll stay. Which is,
I thought they were going to play a card game next based on that. Lady Luck
yeah.
made me think of a casino.
But no, they do end up playing a luck-based game with
Yeah.
Cyril.
Who turns out he was previously the Knave of Hearts, Jack of Hearts, and the kitchen boy.
Yep. They just reused actors.
Alright,
And then they wrote it into the story.
So the Celestial Toymaker's like, well, I gotta choose someone who they would never lose to. Oh, the schoolboy. And then Cyril showed up. It's like, wait, is that the schoolboy? He seems really old for a schoolboy.
And he is.
Yeah.
And he's also kind of a jerk.
It's because he never wants to lose.
Yeah.
But then episode 3 ends.
So in episode 4, they start playing this game where there are 12, I think, triangles on the floor.
14.
14. And
The TARDIS is on triangle 14.
right, basically all they have to do in this game is roll the die, move how many ever spaces is shown, and whoever gets the TARDIS first wins.
Right.
So simple, right? But no, because if you don't, everything on the floor that's not one of the 14 triangles will electrocute you and kill you.
Not only that, the move indicator also sometimes randomly sends you to random squares, just because it feels like.
Or has you miss a turn.
Or Cyril makes up rules in the middle of the game.
So Cyril lets Dodo go first.
Right,
And-
Steven's pretty suspicious. He's like, wait, we have 2-to-1 odds over you, Cyril. And he's like, yeah, maybe you do.
And so Dodo rolls, and she goes to wherever she goes. Then Steven rolls, and then Cyril rolls too, and he's like, surprise, if someone else lands in the same space as you, you have to go back to the beginning.
Yeah, he says that when Dodo rolls and she lands on the same square as Steven, so Steven has to go back to the beginning. Because Dodo rolls a 2 at the beginning. So he doesn't move forward enough to catch up to Dodo.
Okay, yeah, so he just made that up, and now Steven's all the way back at the beginning, and then Steven misses a turn.
Yeah, just because the move indicator felt like it.
So Dodo and Cyril keep on going, and Steven misses another turn later on in the game.
Steven is the worst luck in this game.
And eventually, at one point, Dodo lands on the same space as Cyril. Right?
So she has to go back. Because Cyril lands on that space. Because, like, Steven goes off of his triangle, and so
Oh,
it's
yeah,
like,
Steven's
nope,
like, I'm
now
done
you have
with
to miss
this.
a turn for not playing by the rules. And he's like, no, I'm not done missing turns. And Dodo's like, well, you know what? I'm done too. And they walk forward, and then the Celestial Toymaker shows up like, nope.
Yeah, he
Invisible
creates an
wall.
invisible barrier that prevents him from getting to the TARDIS unless they play.
And then Cyril's like, yeah, I landed on your square, Dodo. You gotta go back to the beginning. So now they're both at the beginning, and Steven's missed a turn. And Cyril is only 7 spaces away from the end.
But then it cuts back to the Doctor, and he's still playing, and nothing interesting has happened with him.
But then the Celestial Toymaker gives him his body back, and his voice. And then he complains that the Doctor's not talking, and he's like, you're doing more than enough talking for the both of us.
Ooh. Anyway. So back in Steven and Dodo's game, Dodo
has caught up.
right. Dodo's almost about to win, and then Cyril.
So Cyril needs a 3, and Dodo needs a 4 to win. Right, yeah.
Right, and Cyril rolls a 2.
Well, he puts down some powder first, and then, like,
Right, he puts down powder.
he rolls a 2 or something, and he moves forward. But
But then he gets sent back to Space Nine,
right, so he goes back, and then he like
and now Dodo's in the lead.
by 1 square,
Right.
and then Cyril pretends his foot is injured. And Dodo's like, Steven, we have to help him. What if he's injured? And Steven's like, no, Dodo, just roll the dice.
And I was also like, no, Dodo, just roll the
Me
dice.
too. I was, roll the dice.
But she doesn't. She goes back onto the other square to help Cyril, and it turns out he wasn't actually hurt. And he's like, well, you moved off your square, so go back to the beginning.
And she's like, nope. No. No. And she doesn't.
And Cyril's like, fine, well, I'll just roll. So he does, or, well, he's like, no, if you're not going to play by the rules, then I'm going to roll, and I'm going to win. And he does win. He gets a 5. But he slips on his powder that he put down.
And he gets electrocuted.
And he dies!
He just dies. And when this happened, I didn't see it coming. I was like, whoa. Whoa. Whoa.
And then Steven's like, well, I guess we won, so let's just go. And then Dodo's like, no, we have to finish the game. Which I thought was actually a pretty smart move on her part, because you know if they just walked forward, the Toymaker would have been like, nope, sorry.
Yeah, well,
So-
Steven jumps ahead 1 square and finds the pound. He's like, whoa. Steven almost dies.
So they finish the game, and they get to the TARDIS. And it's the real TARDIS this time.
And the doctor's like, yeah.
And meanwhile, the Doctor's almost finished his game. He gets to the second to last move, and he's done it right.
And he's about to make the final move. And he's like, you know what? No. And he just walks away.
Yep. And the Toymaker's like, what? No, Doctor, what? What are you doing? The Doctor's like, I won't be distracted by you here any longer. So he goes back to the TARDIS. And
And you think everything's gonna be done.
but nope.
The Celestial Toymaker has one final trick up his sleeve.
Which is that he tampered with the TARDIS, won't let the Doctor leave unless he finishes the trilogic game. But also, if the Doctor finishes the trilogic game, the entire universe will be destroyed.
Yeah, that miniature universe. The Celestial Toymaker.
His universe will be
dimension
destroyed.
thing.
But not him, because he's immortal and he can just create another universe.
So if he destroys the universe, then the TARDIS goes with it, apparently. So the Doctor's thinking of a way to do it. And he asks the Toymaker to bring the puzzle inside the TARDIS, and the Toymaker's like, no, you can just preset to leave as soon as you make the final move. And the Doctor's like, And then
Steven's like, well, what are we going to do, Doctor? We can't just sit here and talk our way out of it. And the Doctor's like, that's precisely what we'll do. So,
then the best scene. The scene was amazing.
really? You thought you liked this scene? Oh, okay.
It was pretty great, though.
Well, the Doctor remembers that the Toymaker had been controlling the trilogic game with his voice.
Oh yeah, side
Has
note,
he been
apparently
playing?
that Steven can pilot the TARDIS.
Yeah.
Because he tells Steven to preset for dematerialization, and he does it!
Yeah, he can do that now.
Although I feel like
Yeah.
he never uses that ability again.
Probably not.
So yeah, he does that.
And then the Doctor mimics the Toymaker's voice and commands the game to go to the last move. And it does, and the universe starts to dematerialize or whatever, as the TARDIS starts to dematerialize, and they make it out in time, and the Toymaker's like, no!
You should have seen that coming.
You should have.
If you're gonna put voice capability into your games, make sure you plan for them to be abused.
And then the Doctor and friends escape.
And then Dodo's like, hey, here's some of Cyril's candy. And the Doctor's like, let's have some. Ah! And it ends.
Yep. He eats one of his enemy's candy that he gave him, and unexpectedly falls over in pain. Why would you
He
do that,
falls on
Doctor?
Steven. Oh, jeez.
He totally should have seen that coming. Not gonna lie, one of the
Yeah.
worst mistakes he's made.
Why didn't he see that coming? Although I feel like they'll just write that off in the next episode, and he'll just be like, "Ow, that was really hard candy."
We'll see. We'll see what happens. But yeah, overall pretty good serial. Again, not a fan of how they keep writing the Doctor out.
I don't know. My favorite serial of season 3, to be honest.
Yeah, I was pretty surprised when you said that, because I don't know, I liked the arc and Dalek's master plan a lot better than this. Well, this was my third favorite serial in season
You don't have
three.
a lot of good cereals to choose from.
Not yeah, not really. Then again, this is what the
Seventh cereal.
seventh,
Seventh of season 3.
right? There was Galaxy 4.
Don't worry, that's just our recording booth falling apart. There was Galaxy 4, Mission to the Unknown, The Mythmakers, Dalek's Monster Plan, The
Right, the
Ark,
Myth
and then
Makers is the
this.
one I was forgetting. Um,
How could you forget The Mythmakers? That's when Vicky left. And the Doctor
well,
just didn't care.
maybe I just didn't care. Um, but yeah, honestly, kind of a generic cereal, I guess. I mean, I
Really?
think we're
I didn't
getting
think so. I thought
well.
this was the
Okay,
most
no,
original cereal of season 3.
okay, that's actually true. While I was watching it, I was like, "Whoa, this cereal is unlike anything we've ever seen before." But then afterwards, I was like, this cereal had a lot of potential, but they didn't really go in depth into like what the Toymaker can do. And well, they kind of did, but I feel like the Toymaker could have done a lot more than just taunt the Doctor and taunt Steven and Dodo. And I mean, I guess that's the appeal of his villain is that he's just this guy who loves playing games and winning games. But I don't know. I felt like that the entire universe of the Toymaker could be fleshed out a lot more. And I know he doesn't appear again in the TV show, but he
Shows up in
could.
the audio
He
dramas.
could. I feel like he was a pretty interesting villain, but the way they executed the serial, I felt it was just like another cereal in the pile. Which honestly, I think we're getting to the point where we've watched enough serials that not every serial is going to be unique or stand out. It's just going to be like,
Right.
okay, another. If it's just okay, it's just going to be like another serial that we've watched, another forgettable serial. I mean, I don't
I don't
know.
know. I felt like this story posed the greatest intellectual battle for the Doctor. I mean, sure, there was the monk, but he wasn't really that much of a problem for the Doctor, to be honest. Whereas this one, it was more suspenseful than any serial before because, I mean, they can't kill off the main character, but you didn't know if maybe it was a possibility that he could lose and he would just stay there forever, and that the entire rest of the series was set there. I mean, you wouldn't know that. I mean, especially when the serial was airing, you wouldn't know that the Doctor would win the game,
Right,
nor that Stephen or Dodo would win their games in time to find the TARDIS before the Doctor loses or wins.
right. I mean, there had been more abrupt writing outs of companions before, so know, you wouldn't exactly foresee that Steven and Dodo would succeed.
Right.
Um, and but honestly, I see where you're coming from with the whole biggest intellectual battle for the Doctor thing. But at the same time, as I was saying before, the way they executed it kind of fell short because the Doctor scenes were just him playing the game unfollowably because they were skipping around and stuff. And I feel like if they had created a simpler, yet at the same time still still sort of complicated game for the Doctor that they would actually follow along with instead of him just making moves and you seeing him do that, then it would have been more interesting for the viewers and actually would have conveyed the whole sense that he's playing this really complicated logic puzzle against an enemy with a similar intellect.
Well, I think in the end the point was to show that there was an intellectual equal to the Doctor, but also to put Steven and Dodo into a situation where the Doctor is completely powerless to help and is even working against them. So the Doctor, I mean, was challenged by the fact that if he moved too slow, then the Celestial Toymaker would force him to move to a specific point in the game. But also, if he moved too quickly, then Steven and Dodo wouldn't be able to get back to the TARDIS in time.
That's true, so they kind of had to coordinate it,
Right,
which was impaired by the fact that the Doctor couldn't say anything.
right.
Um, so that was, I agree that that was kind of suspenseful. And to be honest, this entire serial kind of conveyed a whole Alice in Wonderland esque feeling
Definitely.
because with the dolls and cards and stuff coming to life, and just the sheer ridiculousness of all of it, and the adversaries that just sort of make things up as they go along.
Right.
um, everything being so ridiculous, but yet with
Right.
these three characters thrown into it all who are trying to use logic and stuff, but it doesn't really work. They're just kind of thrown into it and overwhelmed.
I mean, honestly, based on this serial, which I liked, I think that out of all the villains I've seen, the Celestial Toymaker has the ability to be the most terrifying because he's basically
He is immortal.
unstoppable.
He's immortal. He can create universes, turn people into whatever he wants.
I
And
mean, sure, the Doctor has other great enemies that are like equal to him. I mean, there's the Daleks, and then we're gonna meet the Cybermen eventually, and then there's the Master. But honestly, the Celestial Toymaker is the enemy who the Doctor could probably lose to.
yeah, honestly, if the Celestial Toymaker wanted to do anything other than just play games forever, he would be a pretty terrifying adversary.
They should bring him back in the reboot. If they wanted to create a reboot series where you truly didn't know if the Doctor was gonna survive, have the Celestial Toymaker be a recurring villain for the whole season, and in the end, just reveal the whole season took place in the Celestial Toy Box, and then in the final episode, he has to escape.
That would be pretty cool. I mean, honestly, I feel like the Celestial Toymaker has a lot of untapped potential as a villain. I mean, he doesn't show up again in the show. He does in the
I
audio
mean, they
dramas.
planned for him to. I mean, that's why he shows up in the audio drama, because that audio drama where he shows up again was based on a proposed serial for the Sixth Doctor where he would show up again.
But yeah, I definitely suggest bringing him back. I mean,
I mean,
pretty
the
cool
Doctor
villain.
even mentions when he leaves, like, "Oh, we'll probably see him again,"
Yeah, and Dodo's like, then that means your battle with him will be never ending. And the Doctor's like, yup.
which I thought would imply that he would show up again and
Yeah,
be a
same.
recurring villain, but I guess not. I mean, maybe part of that can be attributed to the fact that this serial was such a mess behind the scenes,
Oh, yes.
which we may as
Um,
well get into now, since
yeah.
that's where this conversation is going.
So each episode of this serial was written three times.
Yep.
First it was written by the original writer, um, what's his name?
Yeah, Brian Hayles had delivered all four original scripts.
Right, but then
Daniel Tosh, Donald Tosh rewrote the scripts because
because
he
of,
didn't think they would be able to be created in the way that they were written originally. And then when he finished, he wasn't script editor anymore, so his replacement.
had to do it all again.
Yep.
So apparently in the end the series went into more lighthearted territory than had originally been planned, I guess.
Right.
I still felt it had a nice mix of, well,
Yeah, I mean, part of the
it had that creepy feel because the enemies were so lighthearted, but there was so
right.
much at stake.
I mean, part of the reason why I like this was because, I mean, there was that humor serial whose name is completely
The
gone.
Romans,
Yeah, the Romans. And this serial was humorous, but it was humorous, but also suspenseful. It wasn't purely humorous. It used humor in the right way.
right? And I mean, again, it's kind of like Alice in Wonderland, where it's really, I guess, ridiculous and comedic, but at the same time, the characters might die.
Right.
So
Or, sorry. Not even die, just be stuck as dolls forever. Or if you're the
yeah,
Doctor, be stuck playing the Celestial Toymaker's games forever.
yeah. Um,
So,
the we might want to mention that the Doctor was originally going to quote unquote regenerate in this serial, and by
yeah.
regenerate I mean disappear and then appear as a different actor.
And they were just never going to explain it. They would just chalk it up to the Celestial Toymaker being the Celestial Toymaker.
And that's how they were going to write William Hartnell out. I guess they knew that they were going to give him the axe at this point.
Yep, guess so. But the new producer who started, like, when this serial entered production was like, nope, I don't like that.
Thankfully, because that would have sucked.
Yeah. Because imagine the implications for the future then. When they want to write out the next actor, what are they going to do? Bring back the Celestial Toymaker?
Every time the Doctor regenerates, they have to bring back the Celestial
That would be
Toymaker.
terrible.
Yeah, I mean, if they had gone with their original plan, the way the Doctor would regenerate would just be up in the air every single time. I mean, it would just be like Doctor goes into a room, comes out as a different actor, and no one mentions it, which would be terrible. But no, they thankfully didn't go with that.
Yeah.
And so
Thank
Hartnell still
goodness.
has a couple serials left in his run,
Yeah, he
as we've been mentioning.
probably has 4, I think, for this season, and then 2 in season 4. Something like that.
Yeah, he has 3 left in this season. 2.
3 left in this season?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's 3 left in the season and then 2 in season 4, so he's 5 serials left. Yeah.
So we'll be saying our goodbyes to the first Doctor very soon. But we'll get into that when that happens.
Right. There's also the copyright infringement with this episode, or the alleged copyright infringement.
Right. Apparently Cyril is from another TV show.
Yeah, you're supposed to be like some guy named Billy in another show, and the actor ad-libbed the line, "My friends call me Billy," which basically made the comparison take place, so thanks for that.
Thanks, whatever. Peter. Yeah, thanks, Peter Stevens. Yes, that was his name. Peter Stevens. Stephen Purves. No, I don't know. uh, um, but yeah, at the end of the final test, which is the 4th episode of this serial, they had to announce that Cyril was only meant to be like Billy Bunter, not that he actually is.
When he said that line, I thought he said, "My friends call me silly," like as a play on Cyril, but also like the schoolboy was silly. And I thought, haha, that's actually kind of funny, but I guess not.
I mean, it makes more sense, to be honest.
Yeah.
So yeah, there was definitely a lot going on behind the scenes with this serial. But overall, I mean, if I had never read how much went on behind the scenes, I wouldn't have ever guessed that
Yeah.
anything did.
You
'Cause,
you would never have known. I
yeah,
mean, the only like any indication that anything was different was I noticed the producer's name was different. I was like, "Huh, they probably just changed producers."
yeah. Which at this point, Verity Lambert has not been producer for quite a while, so nothing really surprising.
Wow, the producer who succeeded Verity Lambert didn't last very long, did he?
Nope.
Poor guy. John Wiles. Oh well,
So yeah, I
those
think
Queen of Heart costumes.
the costumes in this serial were just kind of weird. Which
The
was
clowns were kind of terrifying. Not gonna lie.
Okay, what color did you imagine their face paint? I know we had this discussion way back when in the Aztecs, but I imagined their face paint as being bright red, just like I did with the Aztecs.
Oh, I imagine white with like red lips.
Oh well, yeah, for Joey, but I imagined Clara's being just bright red, like
I
blood,
didn't imagine that at all. You were thinking of Oompa-Loompas, weren't you?
but even more red.
Oh my.
'Cause Oompa-Loompas kind of have that orange tint.
Oompa-Loompa.
Anyway, the costumes were weird, as they should have been, so it was
The
fitting.
Celestial Toymakers was very extravagant.
Right, it was sort of a Mandarin costume, I guess. I don't know.
He was going to be called the Mandarin when he came back. Or he would be calling himself the Mandarin. Why? I don't know.
I think he is in the comics and audio dramas.
Probably.
Um,
This makes me want to listen to the audio dramas, because I want to listen to his return.
Same actually, but we'll
figure that out
we
when we
might-
get there.
We might get there.
We
Maybe.
might get there. Didn't you calculate it's going to take us 4.5 years?
Yeah, it's actually going to take us 4.5 years to catch up to where the series is now.
So that
by
doesn't-
which time
yeah.
there's going to be even more episodes. So, I mean, main aliases: the Guardian of Dreams, the Crystal Guardian, and the Mandarin. Yeah, we were kind of discussing how once we catch up to the show, which we inevitably will, because we're watching it at a way faster
It's going to
pace,
happen eventually.
but not for like 5 years, simply because there's so many episodes for us to watch. But once we do catch up, we're thinking of watching or listening to the audio dramas while we wait for new seasons to come out, just so we have something to do.
Hey, he comes back again with the 8th Doctor in the audio dramas as well. That's exciting.
Hmm.
So, I guess that's everything we wanted to talk about.
Right.
It's everything I wanted to talk about.
Yeah.
Email us, thedoctor@decorativevegetable.com. Inbox count of new emails is still at 0.
Unfortunately.
For like 4 months now. Check us out on iTunes. Rate us on iTunes. And next week is...
The Gunfighters.
should be a good serial, I think.
But until then, the end.